Hi, I'm Dr. Nash, and I'm Susan Nash, so call me Susan. At any rate, let's talk about how we can use neuroscience to help us write. And basically, I'm talking about the neuroscience of creativity and how we can map the writing process through cognitive science. And basically, it's a metacognitive framework. So let's just jump right into it. So first of all, we've got several sections in this presentation, and the first section is the brain's creative architecture. So let's start by understanding the hardware of the human mind and the specialized regions that drive composition. So we're basically tying writing and composition to brain activity. Like, ooh, that's scary. Okay, so let's look at the CEO of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, the PCF. And it's located behind the forehead, and this area is the seat of high-level cognition. So this is where the executive function happens, the planning, organizing, monitoring. This is where the filter happens. So this is where you do self-regulation, self-censorship. Also, this is where task switching happens. So it moves the writer from brainstorming to, say, something more analytical, like technical editing. So this is where all the so-called rational things happen. Now, let's look at the archives. The temporal and parietal lobes are the places that store the data and patterns required for synthesis. So think of these areas of your brain as the file cabinets or the little file folders in your hard drive or some other place or any place that you store data. And so they're there. Now the key is knowledge retrieval. How do you get the knowledge back and out? So knowledge retrieval is important. You have to figure out how to access the facts, vocabulary, grammar, and then there's also semantic processing. And this is basically where you map meanings and associations between words. This is pattern recognition. And then more boldly, and we say absolute pattern recognition, identifying connections between disparate sources, but then also patterns with similar and related sources that don't have much semantic distance. So let's take a look at the neutral trio. The neural trio. The neural trio is we're talking about the neuroscience part of your brain. So first, we have the DMN, which stands for the default mode network. And this is active when the mind is at rest or when the mind is wandering. This is where the flashes of insights, the light bulb moments happen. And then you have the ECN, executive control network. And this is active during high focus tasks. This is where you start finding out or determining if an idea works or if it fits the logic of the paper or the idea. And then so we've got D, M, N, E, C, N, and then finally the Salience Network. This is a switching system, the dynamic switch. This is the place where the external stimuli and internal states are monitored. It monitors the external stimuli, internal states to decide which network should be in charge. So the Salience Network is the one that says, oh, your default mode network should be in charge, or the executive control network, or maybe flipping back and forth. And we'll talk about why this can be kind of problematic. So Arne Dietrich is a professor of psychology at American University of Beirut, talked about transient hypofrontality. Dietrich proposed that creative breakthroughs occur when the prefrontal cortex is temporarily tuned down or bypassed. So the theory is that by relaxing the brain's filter, we allow more associative, unconventional thoughts to emerge from the lower brain regions. This explains why insights often happen during exercise or showers, like if you're walking the dog. Rex Young is a neuropsychologist at the University of New Mexico, and he talks about neuroplasticity. This is so important, and I'm going to spend an entire lecture talking about neuroplasticity. This is our hope. But neuroplasticity and flow also being something that has been investigated in other settings. But Jung's research focuses on how the physical structure of the brain, the white matter, influences creative capacity. So low integrity equals high creativity. Jung found that slightly looser connectivity in certain frontal areas may actually facilitate faster divergent thinking. And then we've got creative paths. So creativity is not just in one spot in the brain. It is the brain's ability to take the scenic route between information nodes. So going through that structural connectivity. I like to think of it as a deep marine turbidite. What do you think? What? But if you think about it, in the Gulf of Mexico, a lot of the oil fields or the reservoirs there are in different like lobes, basically, of sand, and they are connected. But how are they connected, and what is the mechanism of connectivity? It's kind of the same. So the idea that some of these complex reservoirs in the deep Gulf of Mexico could be like brains with creative. Oh, well, okay. This is interesting, but I will explore that in a future one. Okay, so section 2, theoretical frameworks. How psychologists model the invisible work of the creative writer. First, there's dual process theory. So system 1 is what we can consider the draftsman. Fast, automatic, emotional. Does that sound like anything that you might have heard from Amos Tversky? I think yes. Okay, so it enables flow. It doesn't worry about grammar. It worries about capturing the raw heat of an idea. And then system 2 is the editor. It's like, I would also call it the auditor. Slow, deliberate, logical, somewhat rigid. And this is necessary in the writing process for things like citations, structure, tone. I would also argue that it's thesis statement, mapping to sections and mapping to the topic sentences in either the sections or the body paragraphs, depending on the size and complexity of your paper. Anyway, interesting, keep in mind, the editor actually is high effort and consumes significant glucose. I don't know about you, but when I was working on my master's thesis, and then I found the same parallel when I was editing and going through revisions of my dissertation, I started eating M&Ms. Why? I usually don't even like them. So I think my brain was craving glucose. Productivity equals system 1 production and system 2 interference. Teresa Amabile, professor at Harvard Business School, she talks about she has created a componential model. Amabile identifies 3 essential components for a creative intersection. So first is expertise, and that's your memory or knowledge bank. 2, creative skills, your neuroflexibility. I was going to say flexicity. Bringing together plasticity and flexibility. Neuroflexicity. No, and perseverance. Perseverance is really important. I mean, you have the flash, but you've got to have the way to bottle the lightning and keep on making it turn into a pattern. And then finally, intrinsic motivation. And you've got to care. Writing because the problem itself is fascinating to you. Maybe not, and let's keep that in mind. It must be interesting to you. And this is why I always say, let's try to find things that are interesting. Write about what you care about. And partially it's selfish because if I just give you the same prompt and then I have to read all this boring stuff about from people that don't care, and it's just a recitation of facts and organization, and if there's any passion in there at all, it's sort of like, well, highly orchestrated, and it's just not interesting. But if you care, there's that spark, and then the spark of creativity, the spark of caring, the passion, it communicates. It communicates. It communicates to your reader, to your listener. So extrinsic pressure, grades, deadlines can often narrow the neural focus and kill DMN activity. Uh-oh. I think we already knew that. Combinatorial creativity. Well, I love this. I mean, I think we already know it. Everybody knows this. She's putting it into a really elegant terminology. Creativity is rarely a bolt from the blue. It is a shuffling of existing deck of cards. The synthesis machine. In academic writing, this means taking source A and source B to create a third thought. Memory retrieval, pulling facts. Semantic linking, finding a bridge. Pattern matching, creating a new schema. So, okay, let's just break this down. Let's see, I'm writing about, is a Corgi the right dog for me? Okay, so I'm thinking, pulling facts, and then finding a bridge between my experience, my goals, my outcome, my hypothesis. I think a Corgi is not good for me, although I love them. And why? And then pattern matching, creating a new schema. This is everyone's favorite flow person. Mihaly. Oops. Hungarian. Csikszent. Oh my goodness. Csikszent Mihaly. Csikszent Mihaly. I can read it. I read it all the time. Do I say his name? Not often. Usually only with my sister, who has a PhD in psychology, and he's one of her heroes. So he's the architect of positive psychology and flow theory. 9 dimensions of flow. When a writer is in the zone, they experience clear goals, immediate feedback, loss of self-consciousness, ECM suppression, transformation of time dilation, complete concentration. Okay, so Section 3, let's go through this really quickly. Let's apply neuroscience to the timeline of creating and writing an essay. A. Pre-writing, incubation, activating the DMN. The goal is cognitive looseness. So step away, let the brain work in the background. Then nonlinear mapping. Use mind maps to encourage associative leaps. And a lot of times people use words, mind map. Let's try just images. Images and almost like videos in your brain, experiences. Try to translate those and capture those, not just writing down words that then do have associations. No, we want to have something that hits the heart, and the visual hits the heart. Okay, sleep. REM sleep is when the brain rewires connections between the new research and old knowledge. So, sleep. Drafting. Sustaining flow. There's blind drafting. So turn off the monitor, hide the text. Just don't let anything edit you. I'd say get out a piece of paper. Intervals, 90 minutes max. So don't sit and work on the same thing for 90 minutes at a time. Take breaks. And then ghost draft. Write as though no one will see it. I say write an unsent letter. That's why I like to do it. So we don't want to have social threat responses and the amygdala stimulated. Ooh, no. Okay, revision is the executive audit. Wait 24 to 48 hours. Then, and why? Because the brain develops a blind spot for its own creations. This is a survival mechanism. It saves energy by glossing over familiar patterns. So, this way, if you let it rest, then you can come to it with fresh eyes and you will actually see it from an independent, almost third-party perspective. Okay, so academic writing research. Consider research as a dialogic partner. Bakhtin talked about the dialogical imagination. He basically said that speak to and talk to the voices of the past, your forebears, your articles, your authors. Nancy Summers, director of expository writing at Harvard, says novices revise at word level. Experts revise at the structural level. They look at the arguments and they rethink it. Okay, keep that in mind. And then she did a study of students versus professional writers, and she found that with novices, they have a dialogue with the sources. Experts have a dialogue with arguments. I'm not sure why it says sources. Sorry, typo. And then novices do a simple summary of the things that they find in the text of the arguments in the papers, but the experts will do a simple summary of the essential arguments. And then also she found, and let's look at it this way, 30% of novices have a dialogue with the sources, 95% of experts dialogue, and then 90% of novices just do a simple summary. They do an annotated bibliography, and poof, they're done. 10% of experts do a simple summary, but mainly they're involved in engaging with argument. Okay, this is something I think we should all do. We do it unconsciously, and then we think, oh, why shouldn't we do this? It's cheating. But it isn't cheating. When you look at it, okay, so it is very easy to say, oh, I see this article, I see the title, I see the abstract, or just I'm glancing at it, and I'm thinking, I think this is already going to say this or that. And I think that over time, I've sort of taught myself not to do that, because I don't want cognitive bias to get into the way, or presuppositions. But here's another way to look at it. If you let yourself do that, and you write down what you think the author will say, and then put down all the things that you already know about the topic, then go in and see, was I right? Did I guess right? Were my suppositions on target? And so that's really the key. I mean, so then the reason it's interesting and the reason it works is because you're making connections to prior learning and experiential learning from the past. So you're absolutely creating scaffolding. And then the science says just what I said, but in different words. This primes the associative networks in the temporal lobe, making it far more likely that you'll recognize a creative spark when you see it in the text. Well, right. Section 5, practical optimization. Glucose, ATP. Prefrontal cortex is a gas guzzler of the brain. When you're tired, you revert to cliches and simple summaries because the complex creative synthesis takes too much energy. So this is time to recharge, go on a walk, get oxygen, eat something nutritious. Circadian rhythms, peak versus off-peak. Morning for most, best for ECN tasks, logic, technical editing, citations, when you're charged up with glucose. The optimal window, off-peak, when it's late, you're tired. It's really good for lower filter transient hypofrontality. So, in other words, daring creative leaps. You relax and you go ahead and make things that your editor brain will say, no, that's illogical. That's ugly. Anyway, here's a strategic matrix. Writing task. Literature review. Parietal archive. Okay, here's the hack. Schema priming. Writing before reading. Introduction. Generative. Use system 1. Write the intro last when you're tired. I totally agree with that one. But don't write your thesis statement last. Technical revision. ECN executive. Morning session. High glucose. No distractions. And in the morning when you're writing, have total silence. Go to your quiet spot. Turn off your phone and just get into a zone. And give yourself 15, 20, 30 minutes. Argument design. Salient switching. Walk and talk. Use voice to text to stay in the flow. So important, especially when you're burned out and you're sitting there just staring. 3 golden rules. 1, never edit while you draft. Why? Because you are trying to use the ECN and DMN at the same time. It causes neural gridlock. 2, rest. Incubation and distance are not breaks from work. They are the work. They allow the DMN to fix what the PFC broke. 3, prime. Research is a conversation. Don't just absorb. Talk back. Activate your internal archives before opening an external one. Talk, talk, talk. Chatter, chatter. Talk. Think Bakhtin. Read about Bakhtin, the Russian philosopher, rhetorician, talked about the carnivalesque and the fact that, especially the dialogical imagination, we talk to and engage in conversations with the people with ideas. Have ideas back. Don't just sit and take it. Just passively agree. Question. Creativity is the result of a mind that has been fed the right information, rested at the right time, and allowed to speak without fear. So finally, metacognitive mastery. You are now equipped with a cognitive framework to manage your own creative output. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this, and please send me a message. Be in touch. Like this and subscribe.